On July 14, 2017, YouTube personality Lacey Green was interviewed on The Rubin Report. During the interview, Lacey noted that her experience with questioning accepted beliefs found within the social justice community reminded her of her experiences with questioning her Mormon religion from her youth.
You have this community that is organized around moral principles, and you feel really repressed and shamed and restricted whenever you commit a thought crime, and you have to confess and you have to apologize when you make a mistake, but your apology is never really good enough. You always are deep down an original sinner, you know, and you have to be cast out. You're going to be excommunicated if you make too many mistakes. It's the same exact thing.
Like Lacey, I too was once a Mormon. Hence, Lacey's comments inspired me to think about the social justice movement in terms of religion. From there, I abstracted some common themes that I have observed within the movement and translated them into statements that appear to represent their directives. In so doing, my aim is to help explain why the social justice activists think, act, and behave as they do. To that end, here are the social justice 10 Commandments. Commandment number 1.
Thou shalt have no gods or religions before social justice.
For the most part, the social justice movement is secular in nature. On its face, it generally rejects religion as being a tool of both past and present oppression. There are some exceptions, but even in those cases, social justice causes are given priority above religious faith. However, much like religion, the social justice movement is an all-encompassing framework that its adherents use to view the world. It reigns supreme in its influence upon the minds of its believers, and they will jealously submit to no other ideology. It is also faith-based in that it presumes that adherence to its tenets will result in an improved society. Tellingly, some early proponents of social justice shortened the name for their emerging secular religion to be Sokjas. Critics immediately recognized an eerie similarity in this abbreviation to the secular religion invented by George Orwell in his book 1984, called Ingsoc. Ingsoc was newspeak for English socialism and represented the totalitarian political ideology which gave rise to Big Brother. As the 9 other social justice commandments demonstrate, this similarity runs deeper than the abbreviation. Commandment number 2.
Thou shalt elevate feelings over facts.
Social justice has its roots in the philosophy of postmodernism. This philosophy rejects the notion of objective truth and instead believes that everything is subjective. There is no independent reality. There is only interpretation and narrative. This means that, in a fundamental sense, anyone's interpretation of reality is potentially as valid as is anyone else's. What we regard as truth is actually a socially constructed and agreed upon narrative. The only thing which grants superior status to one narrative over another is who wields the power within a given society. This second commandment expresses itself in social justice circles via the demand that one should not rely upon reason, logic, or facts, but rather should simply listen and believe to the interpreted narratives promoted by its members and spokespeople. It recognizes the lived experience of its adherents as being superior to objective reality or evidence. It even goes so far as to regard science and the scientific method as being an imperialist tool of patriarchal oppression that, in the service of social justice, should now be rejected.
And my response to that was, if I personally were committed to enforcing decolonization, science as a whole is a product of Western modernity, and the whole thing should be scratched off, especially in Africa.
Commandment number 3.
Thou shalt honor the victim. Let her be your standard.
The feminine personal pronoun here is deliberate as seeing a woman in pain or trouble generally inspires greater sympathy than that afforded to a man. This commandment supports the directive described in the second commandment to inflame emotions rather than speak to reason. By focusing on how an individual woman may be hurting, this commandment allows social justice believers to bypass issues of fact and emphasize instead the emotional power of the victim narrative. The natural human tendency for empathy for the suffering of others is conscripted to serve as a tool to foment change or to recruit new acolytes. This commandment is why emotionally moving stories that have been shown to be fabricated, such as false rape allegations, can still be upheld as being brave or meaningful. The utility of these stories in promoting the social justice narrative is of greater importance than their factual validity. Commandment number 4.
Thou shalt venerate the sacred 7 identities.
The sacred 7 identities are women, Black, Hispanic, Native American, LGBTQ, disabled, and newly, Muslim. These identities have been agreed upon as being sacred because of their power to inspire emotional responses per the previous 2 commandments. They are venerated primarily for their utility in promoting a narrative of oppressor and oppressed. Within the religion of social justice, if sufficient deference isn't given to one of these groups somewhere in society, then a sin is being committed. Recognizing this need for emotional utility explains why other minority racial groups, such as Asians, are not included. The societal success of Asians, despite being half as populous as blacks in the US, doesn't allow them to be regarded as a victimized or oppressed identity, and hence excludes them from being regarded as a sacred identity to be protected or venerated. This is also why it is perfectly acceptable to make fun of a small religious group outside of the Sacred 7, such as the Mormons. The award-winning musical The Book of Mormon is celebrated by those adhering to the secular religion of social justice. But had something similar been done to parody Muslims or the Quran, the outcry among the acolytes would have been furious and deafening. Commandment number 5.
Those of white skin are born under original sin and must repent.
In the Judeo-Christian tradition, all people are born into original sin due to the transgression of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. In the social justice tradition, original sin is also tied into your ancestry. Your personal degree of sinfulness is based upon the color of your skin. The newspeak word in social justice parlance for original sin is privilege. It is clear from their use of the word that it is not something to be revered, but rather something of which to be ashamed. This assumption of original sin by social justice acolytes is closely associated with the history of slavery. They automatically assume that any white-skinned person has, in some way, benefited from that history. This assumption applies regardless of the ancestry of the white-skinned person, even if neither they nor their ancestors actually owned slaves. As with the other commandments, logic is irrelevant, and only the emotional utility for advancing the Sokjas narrative is of any importance. For example, no one seeking to shame someone on the basis of white privilege considers that some of that person's ancestors could have been on the side that was fighting to free the slaves, and may well have shed their blood or given their lives in that struggle. Given the intermingling of family lineages, this case is not only possible, but likely probable. Nevertheless, the emotional power of shaming someone by invoking their imagined privilege is considerable, which, in turn, means that the converted seek to repent of their original sin through obedience and self-effacement before the Sokjas dogmas.
Aren't you quite aware by holding that video camera on me that you are surrounded by your privilege, right? Take your privilege somewhere else, please.
Commandment number 6.
Thou shalt not blaspheme against Sokjas.
True to its namesake, the desire to control language for social justice acolytes is profound and Orwellian in nature. Not only is the movement rife with jargon, it also stridently opposes the mere whispering of words that it finds inappropriate. Commentators or comics who run afoul of its dictates will be hounded until they abase themselves in apology. Similarly, any ideas that challenge its hegemony are not permitted. Wrongthink is a sin. Criticism is harassment. Free speech is recast as hate speech. And speakers who give words to oppositional views are protested and shouted down. The only language that is allowed is that which passes the abundant and vigilant censors of social justice. All else is blasphemy. Commandment number 7.
Thou shalt employ authority to impose thy virtues.
Members of the social justice religion are so self-assured of their righteous aims that they see no reason to wait for the rest of the populace to be converted. Per the second commandment, power is the means by which a given narrative comes to be accepted as true. And so, they seek to ally with new or existing institutions of authority and thereby coerce any opposition into submission. Legislation that enforces their newspeak terms and prosecutes blasphemy is encouraged. Campus sexual assault tribunals are organized with the express intent of circumventing due process in their zeal to convict the accused. Human rights commissions are created to assist in ferreting out and punishing non-compliant voices. Bill C-16 in Canada demonstrates this commandment in action. This newly enacted law requires its citizens to respond with the properly invented words when compelled to do so. So now, not only can you be found guilty of the things you do or say, but also of things that you do not do or say. Persuasion of the unconverted is not necessary when your ideology can be enforced via authority. Commandment number 8.
Thou shalt seek grievances against Sokjas to fuel thine holy outrage.
Since emotion, not reason, is the key to both activism and the conversion of the uninitiated, social justice acolytes constantly surveil the world around them for any infractions that might be potentially inflammatory. The impact of such infractions is irrelevant, as even the tiniest of perceived microaggressions has the potential to be escalated to a crisis. The louder the exclamations of outrage, the greater the grievance. Petty things can be inflamed to become icons of oppression, and in turn, those newly minted icons are then held up as proof of the need for the authorities to sweep in and take corrective action against the offenders.
You want my name?
Yeah, sure.
It's humongous.
Okay. Humongous what? Humongous what?
Humongous.
Humongous what?
That's what it is.
Humongous what? Is that sexual harassment? Is that what you just did when you said that to me?
What, humongous?
Why would you say that to me?
Yes, but my name.
Why would you say that to me?
Why would I say it to
Why
you?
would you say that to me?
Why would you ask me my name?
What? Humongous what? Humongous what? Humongous what? Humongous what? This person just spoke to me in a sexually harassing way.
I did not.
Yeah, he did. He said.
Commandment number 9.
Excommunicate all who question, dissent, or disobey.
The ideology of Sokjas reigns supreme. Even being a member of the sacred 7 identities will not provide immunity should one start to challenge or ask questions about the accepted dogma. Small divergences in thought or action are magnified into heresies. Since Sokjas acolytes seek to establish the truthfulness of their narrative via appeals to authority, they see no need to engage with those of the unwashed populace who differ in outlook or opinion. Open discussion and dissent with outsiders is not just discouraged, it is regarded as a form of religious infidelity. Irrespective of sacred identity or even prior service to social justice causes, those who later challenge Sokjus tenets can face disciplinary action that may range from accusations of apostasy to outright public excommunication. Unrepentant sinners can come to be regarded as fair game and may consequently face harassment, death threats, or physical violence.
It had to be made. Someone had to make it, and I think I possibly am the only one that could have made it in the way that it was made and released. And in a lot of ways, I do think it was career suicide.
Maybe.
Sorry, hold on. It's been tough. It just really goes to show how difficult it is to talk about these things, and when you do start to talk about men's issues or this alternate perspective on gender issues, you will be made an example of by the media, and they will skewer you and show everyone else, don't do it, or we'll do to you what we're going to do to these people who are trying to speak up.
Commandment number 10.
Those who resist Sokjus are enemies and must be destroyed.
Confident in their righteousness, acolytes of the religion of social justice do not shy away from meting out harsh punishments against their adversaries. Because they resist openly engaging with opposing voices, they instead seek to forcefully silence or eliminate them. Hence, they verbally harass opponents, labeling them as racist or sexist in attempts to discredit them and make them into social pariahs. They organize protests, petitions, and campaigns aimed at thwarting contrary opinions from being heard. They dox rivals and write letters to employers in hopes of getting them fired from their places of employment. In more extreme cases, acolytes will proudly gird themselves in the self-made armor of the social justice warrior to take up arms and physically intimidate or harm those they regard as infidels. One group, self-named in true Orwellian fashion as Antifa, an abbreviation of anti-fascist, eagerly dons black face masks and clothing so that they might act anonymously when they set out to extort submission from ideological opponents via the vandalism of personal property. Another group, going by the acronym of BAM, or by any means necessary, organizes raucous protests and publicly endorses violence in their willingness to fight any and all who may oppose their ideology. Both groups are comprised of extremist zealots who openly state that their aims are to destroy any who they perceive may threaten the faith or thwart them in achieving their Sokjus objectives. These are the social justice 10 commandments. Although these commandments largely go unspoken by its acolytes, by acknowledging their existence, we can better understand both the beliefs and the behaviors of this rising secular religion. Furthermore, through these commandments, we can see that the intent of Sokjus is not to promote freedom, liberty, or even equality. Rather, it is simply to overwhelm all other opposing ideologies on its way towards becoming the one true faith that subsumes or subjugates all others.